I come with Rangers news, and not all of it is necessarily great. None of it is terribly unexpected either. So the first thing I want to touch on is Barclay Goodrow. So Barclay Goodrow, I had said in the last episode that he had his rights acquired by the Rangers from the Tampa Bay Lightning in exchange for a 7th-round pick. So this was basically to ensure that they had exclusive negotiating rights with Goodrow before he hit, full-on free agency, which is about a week from now. So I expected, while it wasn't guaranteed, that they were going to be able to sign Goodrow. So that part of it I'm not surprised about. And I had said that I'm happy about what he brings to the table. The Rangers kind of lack his defensive blocking shots, just a smart all-around player, versatile, can play center, can play wing, has won a couple of Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning the last 2 seasons and was on a really effective line with Yanni Gourde and Blake Coleman. But the Rangers have signed him to a 6-year contract worth about $3.64, $3.65 million. So it's definitely, in terms of term, it's long. I mean, it's a 6-year deal. And, 3.64 or 3.65 is, maybe a bit much. I'm not going to go crazy about that. I have more of a problem with the length of the contract. And this is why it's very important, if you can do it, to have homegrown developmental players like Barclay Goodrow. Now, Tampa Bay traded a 1st-round pick to get him. So obviously that is a pretty high cost to bring him in. However, he was paid not much as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I believe it was less than $1 million per season. I'm pretty sure. Again, that 1st-round pick, that of course, and at the time it was kind of eyebrow raising when it happened, but it really worked out for them. And he was in a good situation in Tampa, but with the Rangers, we'll see. So while I think he could be a fan favorite, if he doesn't perform, I don't know if the fans are going to take such a liking to him considering this contract. So again, really like the player, don't exactly love the terms of this deal. And it can be worse. It really can. I believe that, like, for example, the Rangers don't have many bad contracts as it currently stands. But, like, for example, I think the Chris Kreider contract is worse. Lengthwise, long, and for way more money. Now, again, I understand Chris Kreider is, to this point in his career, certainly more of an offensive player than Goodrow. And naturally, that's going to, make you more money. But that, to me, is much more of a problem. Not that it makes it right as far as Goodrow's concerned, but just to put it in perspective. So, but he's in. I think just, if you take the money aside and everything else, this is a good addition, right, in a nutshell. But not a huge fan of the terms of this deal. But what'll be key is what they do around this, right? So if this is one of a couple of bad contracts, you can absolutely deal with that. And it won't be that, major of a problem. But if you start stacking them up, that's when you run into issues. So, other news, Colin Blackwell has been selected by the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft. So, we kind of knew that this was inevitable once the Rangers decided to protect Kevin Rooney over him. And, Julien Gauthier was in the mix. It's somewhat telling that Ron Francis, who drafted Julien Gauthier in Carolina and had a chance to take him here, decided not to. I think that's somewhat interesting. And I know Ranger fans will be happy that Gauthier is still in the mix. Personally, between Rooney, Blackwell, and Gauthier, to me, there's not a whole lot separating the three. Blackwell was certainly, I'd say, the most impressive of the bunch in this past season. Gauthier being the least impressive, although, maybe a coaching change could do him some good. But Kevin Rooney, look, centers are valuable, and Kevin Rooney, for the Rangers, played center. Whereas Blackwell, in the past, I think, has probably played more center, but with the Rangers was more on the wing. It seems like for whatever the reason, they didn't really trust him at the center position, or maybe it was just more out of just a better fit at the wing. But Blackwell, very versatile, can play some power play, can play some penalty kill, hardworking, bit of a late bloomer. And yeah, it's sad to see him go. With that being said, if you had told me before this past season started that the Rangers would lose Colin Blackwell in the expansion draft, I'd say, fine. So, it's one of those things where because he had a good season, maybe they would have lost someone else So even though it's not, you don't get anything back trade wise, you knew you had to lose someone. And so that ends up being a pretty good signing, Colin Blackwell, as it protected them from losing someone else. And so, yeah, it really, to me, it comes down to Rooney or Blackwell, and they decided to keep Rooney. Nothing crazy here. But, definitely wish Blackwell well, no pun intended, with the Kraken. And I'm sure that I think he will be a pretty serviceable piece for that team. And, other news trickling in is, and this is something else that also I'm not surprised about, but Larry Brooks reported that Brendan Smith, mostly defenseman for the Rangers, actually played a little bit of forward as well during his stint with the Rangers, but it sounds like he will not be returning, that the Rangers are moving on from him, and, this is something that I think isn't terribly surprising. I guess either way would have been fine, but, I think it was time. The contract that he had signed with the Rangers after they traded for him, and he had a good little postseason run in 2017. It really started off very poorly, where he eventually got sent down to Hartford, and he was playing some forward. But eventually, you kind of look back, and he really stepped up in the whole Tom Wilson situation, where he decided to fight Tom Wilson. I think he was a good teammate, and he was one of the rare veterans on the team. So I think the thoughts on Brendan Smith, I think in the end, very much improved. Whereas I think for a while, Ranger fans obviously did not like it, for good reason. It was and you can blame Gorton or Smith, but the point is that, again, I guess fond feelings as far as Smith goes, and, wish him well as well, wherever his next stop may be. But, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of news that comes out in the next day or two, especially with the NHL draft coming up. And it just feels like, maybe the Goodrow contract, I guess, independent of everything, but it just feels like there's going to be some shakeups. Whether that's, I got to be honest, I'm a little bit cautious about this. And again, I like the direction that Gorton and Davidson were going in. Sure, it was a little bit slow, and there were things that needed to be addressed that I think they knew, but I'm worried that maybe it's not even Drury. Believe me, Glenn Sather may have a big role in what's going on, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So, kind of excited for the potential action, but also cautious as far as where they might go. But I will be here to report on it. And yeah, it's going to be a fun time as this off season is just kicking off.